We love shooting, hunting, and
all my devices sitting around me are all giving me a thing that we're live. I already know I'm live, so you don't need to tell me. I got everything going off. Anyway, welcome. We've kind of been jumping around lately on the podcast just because we're trying to do different things. We're trying to see what people like to listen to. Some of the great people that we have come on, they just don't have time at night. I know I don't have a lot of time at night, and it's kind of more difficult. So we kind of want to try this. If you like it, let us know. I mean, you can always listen to it later on the podcast channels, or you can always just watch it here on the Long Range Addicts podcast. But without further ado, I want to thank Benchmark Barrels, of course, as always. They've stepped up, helped us. Again, the carbon fiber barrels are there. They've got some pre-fit 22 barrels. Benchmark was known as one of the hailing people behind the 22 market when they came out. So go check out their barrels when you get a second, and you might be pleasantly surprised at what they carry. Today, we've got Jonathan. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Yeah, he's one of the LRT reviewers. He's done quite a few reviews. If you want to see more of those reviews, go to longrangetactics.com. He's got quite a few on there. He's got another one coming up about the new Vortex. Which one did you do the review on the last one?
The Razor HD, the 3.2 goes the smaller spotting scope. Sorry, I'm drawing a complete blank on what the magnification range for it was. It's the small angled Razor HD.
All right, so we're excited to see that. He's got a few more, reviews up on the site, so go check him out. We've got the man we want to talk to today, Mr. Aaron Davidson of Gunwerks. How you doing, Aaron?
Good. Thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. I'm glad you could make some time. I know you guys are probably freaking slammed trying to get stuff for holidays and everything else out like everybody else is. How's the business at Gunwerks doing this year?
Pretty good. We didn't see a lot of real negative effects with ongoing business with our company here in Cody. Fortunately, this small little niche in northwestern Wyoming was one of the last holdout places to really see the infection rates go up. And so far, we've been able to dodge it. We have had a few cases of COVID. Fortunately, none of our teams had anything serious happen. So far, so good.
So has like the COVID with some of your suppliers, does that kind of hurt you guys? I know it's hurt a lot of other people in the industry, but I don't know exactly everything you guys control, I guess I should say.
Yeah, fortunately, most of the gun business is termed by the Trump administration a essential business.
Essential business.
That was nice. We did have quite a few new products that we were trying to launch this year, and that really did affect us. A few of our overseas, Asian manufacturing type stuff, a lot of electronics, some optics, a couple really cool things that we were going to try to bring. Those actually did see impacts. Like, the Philippines manufacturing plant that we were using was just completely shut down for almost an entire year. So that was a big challenge.
Yeah, that's hard. I know. So there was a few of our other people that were on that were just like, we had to quit offering certain things just because of that. Is there any of your big ticket items? What does Gunwerks, I guess I should ask it this way, what does Gunwerks control? Now you guys make your own actions. What else do you guys make?
Yeah, I'll give you the inside scoop. If you look at where we started just like every other small gun shop, right? We went to Stiller and said, hey, stick our name on your action. We had a really good friend up in Canada doing stocks. His name was Ian Robertson. And we did a stock design and supplied to him and said, okay, hey, make this stock design for us. And so about 15 years ago, we were where a lot of these gun shops are today is, we were just picking and choosing the components, bringing those in and assembling those components to, make a nice shooting rifle. And kind of our niche at the time was not stopping with the rifle, but continuing on with ammunition and doing an optic product and calibrating everything to work together, doing the ballistics for the customer and everything, kind of that out of the box, that we're known for. as we've grown over the years, and you may not know this, Cole, but we moved into a new building this year. So we started in a little teeny garage, my garage in Otto, and we used that space for a long time. We moved into like a 4,000 square foot shop in Burlington, and we made a lot of guns out of that little space. And in 2016, we moved up to Cody, and we had about 12,000 square foot shop. And then we kind of just started expanding out of there. We had to pick up a little 3,000 square foot shop over here, and 3,000 square foot of office space over there, and just kind of getting a little too big for our britches. When we built this building over the last year and a half and moved in July, and it's 46,000 square feet. And so you're asking, well, what do we do? So our specialty has always been controlling the technology and engineering behind our products. So, you look at rifle scopes, one of the things that it drives me nuts is the lack of transparency in the rifle scope or optics business. Well, when I started Gunwerks, I started a company called Huskema Optics, and we didn't really do anything as far as the optics train or the optics package. What we did was we did a turret design, zero stop, and then the software programs to mark custom ballistic turrets. And, I was out of Huskema by 2010, and we kind of continued that same tradition on with Night Force with some customized products, and then the revic product. But if you look at what's really important in manufacturing supply chain, it's controlling the engineering, so that's design, and the technical ability to verify that what you've asked to be manufactured is actually what you got. And it doesn't matter whether that is on your shop floor or down the street or across the world. You have to be able to do the design work and then control the quality. So for our shop, we've really focused on that aspect. Like we had our rifle system in 2018. 2018, we relaunched all of our rifle system. So it's in 2016 to 2017, we did a ground up design, new stocks, new bottom metal, new actions, new everything, barrel contours, rings, everything. So from bottom up, complete redesign. And you do a design like that, you do it in SolidWorks. So then you have control of every single part and how it fits and interfaces with the other parts. And for a small shop, let's say you're doing 2,000 rifles a year, you really have to make good decisions about, well, this aluminum part right here, I know we can make it. Like for example, bedding blocks. We used to make our bedding blocks, and we got to the point where we finalized a finish as anodized instead of Cerakote. And once we would make an aluminum bedding block and then send it out to a shop to have it anodized, you look at the extra cost and the shipping and some of the scrap rates, and then compare the total cost there versus actually sourcing strategically from the right supplier. It cost us more money to make them in-house. So for us, we learned pretty quick that the smart thing to do is to do the make or buy analysis and make a decision based on cost or other values that the customer gets. Because if the customer doesn't get value from it, it's not a good decision. So for us, driving costs down has always been something that we've wanted to do. We spend significant dollars on engineering. So start breaking it down for you. A good example, suppressors. We launched suppressors 2 years ago. And we made all of the parts to do all the testing and prototypes in-house. But when we went and did the math, we couldn't make the parts for as cheap as we could buy the parts, bring them in, assemble them, weld them, QC them, do all that stuff. So we said, okay, look, we're going to control the really important parts of QCing the part and the welding and assembly of the part, and obviously the design of the part, that whoever turns the chips, technically that should go to the person that does it the most cost effectively. And in suppressor case, that's how we did it. And we did, quite a few cans that way. And then we end up with some supplier interruption. And then we end up with backlog of stock. And then you start making another decision. It's like, hey, look, we can have these costs low, but if the customer can't get the product, then he's not getting the value. So we just dropped a machine dedicated to suppressor parts 2 weeks ago. I think those guys will be cutting chips on those shortly. And so that's a case of, hey, look, we were able to outsource for lower cost, but because we couldn't ensure the supply chain viability, that was one that we decided to take back in. So suppressors end to end, that happens in our shop now.
Right.
And I'm not embarrassed to share, what we do make outside. We've gone through just about every major barrel guy over the years. And if you look at a gun itself, the stock and its quality and design, that's pretty important. Almost every stock manufacturer could make a design that you pick. So it really comes down to cost and supply chain. For example, we were working with Macmillan for a long time. It took us 12 months to get an order.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to forecast 12 months in advance. We offer almost 4 billion combinations of rifle system in our builder. It's like, how can you anticipate 12 months in advance what you're doing? That we literally brought stocks in. Our stocks cost us more to make in-house than the stocks that we were getting from Macmillan. Now we feel like we got the quality and the design and the flexibility, to do some really cool things. I thought that was pretty awesome. If you look at stocks, we do everything from design, hard tools. The tooling's actually a very, very complex thing, but the process and tooling, all of our bladders, everything we make in-house. And then the stocks actually get laid up in shop, cured, machine inletted, fitted, and put together in our shop. So it's end to end in our facility. You take a look at like the Magnus or the Climber that have some adjustable hardware. That's a pretty good case of where we send out. And you look at the recoil pad. We did a recoil pad there where you don't grind to fit. I always hated the grind to fit recoil pads. I always thought it was just such a rough finish on our product. But you invest a big chunk of money in some tools, and those recoil pads cost us less than the grind to fit component, and they actually fit and finish a heck of a lot better.
Yeah,
But
they look good.
You just look overall. It's like it's about can we get the parts we need when we need them? Can we get the costs that we want? And so those are the decisions we make. So stocks end to end in-house. Suppressors in-house. When it comes to barrels, we've developed this whole composite program via stocks. We decided we need to be doing our carbon on our barrels. Mm-hmm. And so we took on, if you look at those 4 billion configurations, look at all the barrel lengths, barrel contours and everything. I mean, we had hundreds of barrel SKUs. And so again, you look at those lead times on barrels and you're like, man, I got to keep the right mix of 100 different SKUs on hand. Like, it was a huge inventory challenge. So for us, we started doing our own barrel wrapping over a year ago. And we kind of mixed up our supply chain. We get, technically right now, we get tubes, and then we get the cut rifling, and then we do the turning and then the wrapping in-house. So we've got a couple different people touching a barrel before it shows up at our shop, but now we stock 6 SKUs, and we've got 3 to 4 week lead times. So yeah. Huge on the inventory, the throughput, and we feel like we've got a great process on carbon fiber that gives us reasonable weight, finish, temperature performance. We had a question come up about how the barrels perform under heat, and we did some really hardcore stress testing on those, and found that we were getting really good performance under some terrible shooting conditions for point of impact shift and group size and whatnot.
Right. And that's been one of the big questions with barrels in particular, why kind of everybody started coming out with them, because everybody kind of started getting a bad name because they wouldn't hold. You could shoot maybe two shots, 3 shots, and then they just completely fall apart because of the way they did it. What kind of systems or what did you guys go through to test your barrels, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, so one test that we just recently formed, we did 4 different 6.5 Creedmoor barrels. I think they were 22-inch barrels. Mm-hmm. And so 4 different 6.5 Creedmoors, 22-inch barrels. We shot Hornady ammo, which performs reasonably well. We shot 50 rounds. You start with a clean barrel, foul it, and then you'd shoot 50 rounds. It's 10 5-shot groups, and basically as fast as you can shoot. I think the average testing time was something like, it was like 10 minutes. It's in that ballpark. So pretty fast. I think we were measuring external barrel temperatures in the center of barrel that were about 365, 375 degrees. So back at the chamber, you would have been a little hotter, a little cooler at the front. And we saw out of those 4 barrels, we saw no greater than, a quarter minute of angle, point of impact deviation.
Wow. That's
Hot to cold. I mean, start to finish, and that was worse. That was worse. And I didn't think any of the groups really got, more than 10% bigger in that firing sequence as well. All the groups are sub MOA out of those.
That's impressive. Yeah, and to kind of go back to one of the things you hit on before, and a lot of people don't realize this. I have a client that builds custom rifles. They just got into it. A lot of people don't realize that most custom rifle companies only build maybe 100 rifles a year, if they're lucky. Some of them might get more, some of them might get upwards 200. That's one of the big struggles with a lot of these bigger companies is they're building thousands of rifles at a point. So to hold the QC and everything, we went to, he came to me and he goes, "Hey, I want to build an action." I said, "Do you realize what it's going to cost to try and design and build that action with everything that you've got?" I mean, you're looking at $100,000, $200,000 just to come up with an action design, go through all the designs, make it, and do everything else. At what point do you just buy a great action? But that's one great thing that Gunwerks has kind of figured out, that they can go out, design it. They've got all the machinery to build it. They build everything through it, and then they can hold their own tolerances with QC systems, which is pretty phenomenal with the amount of things. If you look on forums, groups, different things, you never really see any bad thing about Gunwerks. At least I haven't.
We've pissed a few guys off, but the truth is, my team has a directive and an understanding that our customer is the most important person in our whole business. And if our customer has a problem, we take care of it. I wish we were perfect. We're not. I mean, we still, some stuff still gets away from us, or something changes over time for a customer. But what we do is we just handle it. And a lot of guys bitch about how expensive we are, but they don't take into account what you just said, the $200,000 it costs to come up with an action design, or they don't account for what it costs. We had a customer that broke a stock right in the wrist. Mike was telling me about it this morning. So this is between the tang and the grip, right in the wrist. And we've done extensive testing. Like I show you the hydraulic test fixture. We took Manners and McMillan and everybody's stocks, and we broke dozens of stocks of each supplier and measured how they produced. And we built our layup system until we were 25% stronger and stiffer in all 6 axes of bend and destruction. It's like our stock is as strong and as stiff as any stock that's out there. And in most cases, it's stronger and stiffer. So a customer shows up and he's got this stock that's broken in the middle. I know that he did something really, really bad. And he didn't cop to it, but my team knows that who cares? Who cares? Get the gun back to us. We'll put a new stock on for it. Get it back out to you. Like, we took care of that customer. So that's why you'll see very, very little negativity, is because we invest the money to give the customer a great product up front, design, it's unique, it functions, etc. But then we also take care of them on the backside. That's a big difference.
Well, and for a lot of companies, they're like, hell yeah, I want that stock back because I want to know what happened to it. Now, it's something that when we were designing new products, we were destroying product after product after product to make sure that it was good enough for the end user. So, if you've got people out there showing you what it does, it's actually kind of a savior for some companies, because then you can fix it as you go along, which is a good thing. And I think a lot of companies don't look at it like that. They're like, oh, another freaking break. I was listening to the Jocko Willink podcast the other day, and he was talking about how many people try to fix things on a day-to-day basis. But instead, why don't you figure out what the basis behind the problem is and fix it and go forward? And I think a lot of companies within the firearms industry don't look at it that way. It's like, oh, we're just going to keep fixing little things instead of taking it back and what you said you guys did and just go through it piece.
One of the things that drives me nuts in the firearms industry is, I mean, we all kind of share design inspiration with each other. I mean, so everybody knows that's how it works. Once in a while, you'll come up with something that's unique enough. You try to patent it and keep people from doing it. But it's like we innovate in very small things. One of the things that drives me nuts is when we just take somebody else's design or idea or process and we copy it without really thinking about the end user. And I think like the quintessential example of that is the M16 Extractor that gets used in Remington 700 twin lug action designs. And so if you look across the industry, there's dozens and dozens of guys making Remington 700 clones and not really innovating. They use the same fire control systems. They're really the same thing over and over and over again. And then they go use an M16 Extractor. And if you look at the whole purpose of a rifle action, it's technically to feed and eject shells.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's its main purpose. The second one is to kind of hold all those systems together. It's kind of an anchor point for your optics, your barrel, and your stock trigger. Like it holds all those systems together. So it needs to align those properly and hold them properly. But that's pretty easy to do. So it's that feeding and ejection. You look at an M16 type ejector and they just don't work reliably enough. That's the reason why we gave up on Jerry Stiller and their action is that M16 Extractor, it's only got 125 thousandths of surface. And what we found is that when guys were in a hurry and they're hunting and they're not controlled at the range, they'd pull back on that bolt and that shell would flip out. It would hang up, it would hit a windage knob on the scope, and it would fall back in backwards. And this happened to me, it happened to my brother, happened to our customers. Then you'd go back and close that bolt, and you'd have this big traffic jam. In the meanwhile, there's this animal that needs another round in it or a round in it, and the action was failing at its main purpose. So what we started doing is we would cut half of that extractor away and just grind the corner off. Well, now we had less than 75 thousandths of extractor width. Now, but it would get the shells to hook over and come out. And if you get the plunger ejector in the right spot and you get it working out the right way, you can make them eject correctly. And between that and some feed issues on the way that all the custom action guys try to tighten all the tolerances up on the bolt fit and the action body, and then you get kind of some binding and you don't get the smooth cycling you want. I'm like, you know what? We can do better than this. So we started from scratch with the idea of, okay, let's make it so you can disassemble it in the field. Let's make it so the bolt lift is light, but we're not going with a heavy firing pin with a slow lock time. Let's make sure that the cartridges get out of there when you pull it back. And so we developed, a different type of extractor system. We did that twin cam, cocking piece with the field serviceable, bayonet style bolt shroud. So the couple things that the user does interface with were improved, right? So there was a reason why we did the design. Obviously, it helped us source parts better and maybe do a better job in the manufacturing and the quality control because we owned the original design and the prints and the tolerances that were required for that system to work. And it was painful, man. It took us 2 years to get that dialed in right. But again, it's like to just go do a design just so you can have your name on it, it's crazy. It's like, what can we improve? What can we make better for the customer?
Well, and that was always the funny thing, working for Remington, being around Remington, everybody was like, there was only one or two things that they really could have done to really make this next step, in machining. And they just never did it. And then other companies came out and they did, the side bolt release, the integral lugs, they changed a few things which did it. But a lot of people really don't put a lot of thought into what you just talked about. And that is the fire control system, because there are some people that have reached out to me on some of our recent reviews and are like, what's the firing pin weigh? What is your spring on your firing pin?
Mm-hmm.
Little things that people are starting to notice that you've never noticed before. A lot of these actions that are out today have pretty much the exact same extraction systems, like you were saying. There's only a few that I know of in the back of my mind, like for instance, Kelby's rifles. They don't run that M16 extractor because he's had issues in his personal life where they've blown up and actually hit people in the face.
Yeah. That's why everybody stopped using the Seiko extractors, because it literally is totally unsafe. The M16 is a little better,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little better, but it's not as safe. and it doesn't function as good. You can see when a company is staffed with or led by people who are product users and abusers. Like if you can go out and use an abused product, you can fail systems pretty quickly. And that M16 Extractor, in my opinion, it's like a non-starter. If that's what your action has, I don't care if it's got integral lug, I don't care how polished it is or what coatings you have in the bolt. To me, it's like you are not serving your customer with an adequate design. You go look at a design like American Rifle Company, go look at a design like the Bighorn. You know, you go find a product where they take 4 or 5 ideas from the industry, put them together into a system that's really nice. I mean, there's product out there that does innovate and does create features that the customer gets benefit from. But man, there's so much Me Too product that just doesn't serve the customer's interest.
Right. And you know, you did say American Rifle Company. Ted really well. And he's always been kind of one of those engineering pioneers with everything. I know a lot of products that he's designed and built that nobody knows he did, you know, for other companies. And it's kind of sad that a company like his isn't getting the reach that it probably should be in those actions. I wanted to kind of hit on this because there's a lot of people, you know, I want to kind of say Gunwerks is the Amazon of the firearms industry. You always see that picture of what's his name sitting behind his desk in his garage, like you were saying. But what the heck is his name from Amazon?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Yeah. So he had an idea and he created it. So this is the thing that boggles everybody's mind. You guys release something. Let's take, for instance, the new 22 you just did.
Mm-hmm.
You guys released it. You put, you know, it's an expensive 22. Everybody's like, oh, hell, nobody's going to buy that freaking thing. And then all of a sudden it sold out in 5 minutes. You guys have had, in the whole time that you've been going as Gunwerks, people always wonder how the hell you guys have done such great marketing. And maybe you don't want to give all of us all your tips and tricks, which is fine. But a lot of people are always like, these guys just killed it with their marketing. They knew who they wanted to market to. They knew how they wanted to hit it. So you guys have done a phenomenal job that way. And people kind of wonder how and why you ever did that. And maybe you can tell us part of it. Maybe you can't. I'll let you decide what you want to say.
Dude, we got lucky, man. We got lucky to start at a time where all we had to do was show people what our rifles could do, and we had the recipe for success. The field was staffed with people like Kenny Jarrett, Mark Bansner, good friend of mine, awesome rifle smith, awesome dude. Lex Weberneck. That field of old school dudes is who was owning the custom rifle space when I started. And you know, there was small shops and there were some guys doing some precision and long range. So it's like we didn't invent long range by any means. But I realized that the whole objective is to hit a target. And to hit a target, you have to build an accurate rifle. And you go back to that quote that Townsend Wayland, that famous quote he did, is like, only accurate rifles are interesting. In our industry, we get this confusion of nomenclature where people say precision when they mean accuracy, and accuracy where they mean precision. Like, accuracy is being able to hit your target. And what that's true. It's like only things that can hit the targets that you're shooting at are interesting. And I cut my teeth on Elmer Keith and kind of his mentality of just send it. Like, that guy would send lead. He was not scared to miss, and that helped him kind of grow and expand his reach. But with that inspiration and understanding, you know, the way I was as an engineer, is that if I did something, a very complex engineering project, the end result should be something very simple for the customer to use. And so we put all that work into developing that custom turret program, and we essentially built the custom turret business. I mean, Kenton existed before we did, but they were no names. They didn't market it. They didn't show people what it meant. They didn't really teach people how to true their ballistics. And they didn't do services for people that, you know, maybe would be interested in buying a product, but not in creating the product. So we made that a big deal, and it took about 3 years for most of the big optics companies to realize that custom turret was a thing to stick. We created that industry, And the reason why it was important is because you can do a really complex thing, which is to take a rifle system, put it together, put the loads together, and then calibrate the ballistics that rifle produces with those loads, and give the guy the ballistics that he can use really easily. And you just take that ballistics chart, wrap it around a turret, and the guy could do some awesome stuff. And at the time, we would show 600, 700, 800-yard shot on TV. We literally would have the phone call ringing off the hook. I remember we had a elk that Jeremy Winters shot at 900 yards, 925, probably the longest shot that had ever been shown on TV. And we aired that thing, and literally our off time, like at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, we had probably 100 phone calls with people calling in, and they wanted to be able to do that same thing. And with a product that was a no BS real deal product, like it worked. We would test and prove the stuff before it goes out. I mean, our tagline is 1,000 yards out of the box. It's like a customer that had no expertise could take that product, make sure it's zeroed for him, do just a couple very simple things to execute a good shot, dial the distance, pull the trigger, and hit the target. And that out of the box performance, that turnkey performance, was a big deal. And I remember all the naysayers, all the guys that actually knew how to shoot long range at the time, were like, BDC turrets don't work. So while we got in here, we had basically uncontested ownership of that space, because all the guys that knew how to shoot long range would poo-poo it, and they didn't realize that not everybody wants to be an expert. Not everybody shoots off of a chart. And I'm a hunter. Like, we kind of propose as topics to talk about technology and hunting and how those things mash up. I hunt, and I've killed 500 animals since I started doing this business. I mean, we go and hunt and shoot all the time. And sometimes it's a cull animal in Africa. That's fun. I mean, shoot for some meat, get some practice. Sometimes it's a frickin' record book kudu, or a big old elk that you've been hunting for 4 days up in the mountains, or maybe it's a sheep where the hunt cost you $40,000, $50,000. It's like, I'd go on hunts where I know the value of that one trigger squeeze, and I know that people don't have time to sit here and fiddle around with all this crap and look at charts and read this and do math. You can't frickin' do math when there's a 200-inch mule deer over there. That's the dumbest thing in the world. You're not going to extrapolate, interpolate some data from a chart. It's like, it's not going to happen. You range, you go start punching buttons on a calculator. Man, when the stuff's going down, you might have 2 or 3 seconds that make the difference between success and failure. And that's where that BDC turret, that the naysayers staying away from those, allowed us to kind of garner all of the ownership of that space. And then you've seen a couple other companies come in and own some of that and do systems like that and do well with it. We worked with the guys at Red Rock for a long time, and then they started their business. Obviously, Best of the West Rifles is a spinoff of Gunwerks, of our business. You look at MOA Rifles, they're kind of in that same area. But I mean, even Fierce, John Mogul knows if you put a BDC turret on a rifle, it's going to do better. So everybody's into this whole packaging up systems and making things that are easy for the customers to use. That was our foothold. Literally, it was the unwillingness of current builders like Bansner to adopt into long range. The people that knew how to shoot long range not being willing to adopt systems that were easy for customers. The scope manufacturers not being willing to do customized ballistic turrets for every customer. They didn't want it. They didn't want the headache of doing that on a customer by customer basis. They like selling through distribution. So all of those things kind of came into this perfect storm of allowing us to come in and kind of gain some reputation, gain some customer base, some credibility. It was, we were on a track for success, and we've never, I've never made any money doing this. I think I figured out how much money I've put into Gunwerks in the last couple of years versus how much I've been paid by Gunwerks to work for Gunwerks. Like, dude, I'm in the negative. Like, I ain't getting rich out of this deal. But it's a relentless desire to create products that serve the customer, that provide value. And we wouldn't be anywhere as far as like our growth if we wouldn't have had that rangefinder product. that rangefinder product was our breakout product that allowed us enough cash flow and revenue that we could invest in systems, in people. And we have almost 70 people that work for me full time right now.
Wow.
I mean, and to build that kind of infrastructure and organization, I mean, you got to cash flow stuff. And most rifle guys know, these little shops that are doing, 50, 60 guns a year by themselves, those are the guys that are making money. Like, they're not paying the overhead, they're not paying the insurance, they're not paying the, the unemployment stuff. They're not paying the huge facility costs. Like, it's an advantage that they have, and that's why you see so many of them. They can make a really good living doing that, but they'd never make enough money that they can innovate and create anything specific to the industry. They can't create a rangefinder product. They can't create a revic rifle scope product. They can't spend the money to engineer a new action design that creates a better performance, for a customer. So I think that the biggest mistake that I see is with custom rifle builders, they don't charge enough money so that they can serve their customers with either better designs or better service. I really think that's the biggest problem in our space. And, being able to design and put together a bunch of products that help guys, I mean, that's what drives me, man. That's the only reason why I'm in business, is making kick-ass products.
I'm muted, so you don't hear all the moving. I wanted to hit on a couple things. Now, whether you want to call it lucky, blessed, however you want to call it, a lot of companies in this industry have been very lucky to hit where they have. Take for instance, Voodoo, Vortex, Voodoo Gunwerks was like that. They hit right when the NRL 22 came out. They've got a phenomenal product, and they just took off. And sometimes you get lucky. But one of the main points that I wanted to hit on what you were kind of talking about, how you're like, well, I've never, taken a check, or however you want to say it. But a lot of companies are not putting back in to go to the next level. A lot of companies get stuck in their little path. And I've seen it more and more in the last 2 to 3 years, to where these companies have been extremely comfortable over the last, 5 to 10 years, and they've had a path. And then all of a sudden, everybody's starting to try and innovate. I mean, there's only so many ways you can innovate a product in the firearms industry, in my opinion. But the innovation key has been a big thing, and that's kind of one of the big reasons why I wanted to have you come on today. And talk about some of the stuff that Gunwerks offers. Now, there's a lot of stuff that Gunwerks offers that everybody knows about. They're high-end guns, they're badass stuff. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is what you just mentioned, and that's the revic system. So the revic system, I'll have you explain it, but it's one of those things that kind of goes above and beyond. And I've seen some other people in the recent couple of years, because you guys have had it out for a few years, trying to follow suit with what you guys did. But can you explain the revic system to everybody listening?
Well, let's just take a little progression of how we got there. So you take that BDC turret that has a good ballistic solution that's been trued for the rifle and ammo combination that it's working with. So if you take that system, I mean, it's very, very effective. You get out to 600-700 yards. I mean, other than maybe a little inclination you might have to deal with, you really don't have to do a lot with elevation change, as long as the turret's close. Man, guys can do awesome stuff with those things. But you start pushing past that 700 yards, now you have to start dealing with inclination. You have to start dealing with air density issues. So if you add some type of solution for that can address those two issues specifically, you can kind of push into that 1,000, 1,100 yard range. So in 2011, we introduced the G7 BR2. This is the first laser rangefinder that had a full ballistic solution in it. And we even went a step further, and we incorporated a routine that would do a kind of a shoot to range calculation, basically for that BDC turret. What is the range that you should shoot to? So let's say you got a target that's 800 yards, but because of air density and inclination, you actually need to shoot to 725 on the turret. So the rangefinder, when you push the button, it would tell you 725, and the user, all he knows is you just dial 725 on the turret. So that rangefinder was blue ocean. For 4 years, we didn't have one competitive product in the industry. And then the competitive product was the Leica HDB binocular rangefinder with ballistics, and we did the ballistic software program for that. So when you'd go make your chip, your card to put on there, you were using our software to download the program, and it was a pretty good solution. It was, you know, probably a half-mile solution. 1,000 yards was asking a lot out of it, I think, because of the way they were doing the table generation. But so that product was pretty cool. And then where we really saw competition was in the SIG 2400 ABS, and that was really the first competitive product. And great product, range good. I think the Chinese guys that they were doing the laser with they're pretty good guys. I mean, they've done a lot of lasers for a lot of people, and they know what they're doing. And I think SIG had enough of the smart guys working for them that they could, you know, push the design where they wanted it, you know, kind of control some quality and some performance features. And I think they pushed, you know, their supplier to become a better laser manufacturer. So you look at that system that we developed there, and where we were at, you know, 2013. You know, we had a ballistic turret system and a rangefinder system that essentially would correct for incline and air density. So, and it would give you a wind hold. So for that shot solution, it would tell you what your 5 mile an hour, your 10 mile an hour wind hold was. So we had pretty much a full solution that we could teach guys that had no experience, a full solution that they could execute. Now you take on the revic. Now this revic I started as a side company, different company than Gunwerks. Kind of designed the revic system to take the ballistic solution to the next level, and basically said, hey, look, lots of awesome rangefinders out there. What can we do in a scope that kind of takes the BDC technology to the next level? And essentially the revic system works just like a BDC scope, you know, scope with a BDC turret. Essentially, all you do is you dial to the target distance. So if you know a target is, you know, 937 yards away, you just reach up and turn the turret on the scope. Looking through the scope, you can see the little heads-up display inside the scope, and you just turn it until the display says 937, you know, 938. So that the system works really easy. Now, the complexity of the system is that it's got a full ballistic solver on board. It's got a position encoder on the turret. It's got weather station, so it's measuring pressure, temperature, compass heading, inclination angle, cant, all that stuff. It's all built into the solver. And the challenge with this product, dozens of challenges. I mean, fitting everything into this package without making it a big, clunky, bulky monstrosity. So we put this whole thing together. We made our ballistic algorithm work really, really fast. I mean, it works lightning fast. Basically, as fast as you click the scope, it's calculating and updating the solution. So you point at that target and you start clicking. I mean, it's solving in real time as you go. So if you take a look at that system, it's essentially just the evolution of the BDC, because now the BDC is correcting for all those parameters. If you take a step further and you tell the scope what the wind vector is, let's say it's 10 o'clock wind at 7 miles per hour. Now the scope knows what the wind vector is. Now it can correct for headwind, tailwind. It can correct for aerodynamic jump. It can add spin drift. We've got a compass in there, so it can do corrections for Eötvös effect. So it can provide literally a full and complete ballistic solution. If you add on top of that the fact that we can do custom Doppler files, now all of a sudden you've got a mile, no problem. The ballistics out to a mile, no problem. It'll do ballistics basically as far as you can turn the scope.
Wow.
So it's just an evolution of the technology of shooting, and it comes from the space of, holy crap, that's a big thing over there. How far is it? I need to shoot it really quick. And out of your guides can get a range. You start teaching guys like how to manipulate buttons, get wind vector solutions, and do this, and pretty quickly, guys that aren't experienced, they're gonna cause a failure. But we can get a range, and you could have two people with rangefinders get two ranges. You can kind of double check each other. But if you know how far the target is, now all of a sudden the shooter has all the control to get the right ballistic solution, to do the wind stuff. All that is under the shooter's control. So it kind of puts a little bit more control with the shooter, and it makes the product, you know, compatible with every range finding product out there, whether it's a binocular or, you know, a monocular, you know, handheld, or maybe even you want to throw one on the rifle itself and do a rifle mounted laser. It's like it works with any laser. If you know what the target is, you can make the solution.
That's impressive. So one of the big things that I guess I have a question about is, you know, the SIG BDX system. I've got one, but it requires three things. It requires your phone, it requires the rangefinder, and it requires a scope. And to be honest, I'm still kind of deciding on whether I like the glass in it. There's just some things I don't like about it. But, you know, a lot of hunters especially are always scared of batteries, you know, especially if it's cold, if anything like that's going on, they're terrified. They're like, shit, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to go to try and do this, and all of a sudden it's dead. How does the revic system work? I guess a lot of people would have that question, like, is it something that I can reliably count on, or is it something I'm going to have to worry about?
Dude, I am
smashing
100%. I have the same fears, 100%. Justified or not, I have the same concerns. For the revic scope, literally, if there is no battery, it works just like a normal scope. So you click it up, dial your minutes, shoot, done. It works just like a normal scope. So for me, the way I hunt with and use a revic scope is I have, usually in my pack, I've got a Kestrel, you know, with ballistics. Like that's a no brainer. It's like, you got to have a wind meter anyways. It's like, why not do a wind meter that's got some ballistics? So I've got one of those. So that's kind of my worst case scenario backup solution. My primary solution is if I got a G7 2500, I've got the ballistics programmed into that, and I've got it spitting out an MOA solution. So most of the time I'm just grabbing a range. It's okay. It's 1200 yards, dial the revic up, take a shot, all good. But if it goes down, you know, you battery, whatever, like I can push a button on that rangefinder and get a minute solution, right? So I've got two products there. So I'd have to have two batteries go down for a failure. If your rangefinder battery goes down, you're not shooting anyways, because if you don't know how far it is, then you're not shooting.
Yeah.
Get close.
Yeah, unless you know how to read mills and compare and do all that.
Yeah, that's wives' tale bullshit, man. It's like you can do that out to about 300, maybe 400 yards. You get any farther than that, and you're just sticking your finger in the wind. You're just guessing. You're
guessing, and that's the big thing. Is anybody that hunts knows that you've got a small window of opportunity in most situations. You know, you see a lot of these guys sitting on a ridge and they're watching the elk for 20 minutes and they finally shoot. And, you know, those are lucky guys to be able to do that. In most cases, it's a very fast thing. So that's one of the cool things about the PMR that's always kind of intrigued me, is everything's kind of right there built in, especially if, you know, you've got 150 yards, 300 yards, you know, depending on where you're at in the United States. You know, out west, we've got a lot further shots that we're going to deal with. You know, back east, you might have, you know, a couple 100-yard shots. If you're lucky, you might reach out that far. But I mean, that's one of the things that I guess a lot of people have to look into when they're buying it. One of the other things that I wanted to ask now, every freaking time I go somewhere, I get asked weight. Weight is everything in the world with these guys. I mean, it's ounces. Oh, I don't want that bottom metal because it's not this. So I want titanium. Is there, and maybe you can't tell me, is there anything in the future of the revic that makes?
Well, you know, the revic's a Gen 1 product. So there's actually, we should say it's like third gen because of how many prototypes we did. I mean, that thing took me 5 years to build that thing finally. A first gen product, you always find more things that you can improve on. And a couple places where we looked at was the battery. We felt like there's some improvement there. The encoder, servicing, you know, servicing, maintaining, you know, so making a few things more accessible. But a lot of the stuff that we've developed there, we really like. You know, one feature that we did that was interesting is the turrets can be adjusted without using a wrench or a tool. I mean, I shouldn't say a tool, because you can use a bullet tip, you know, to slip the turret, set it where you want it, and that slips the 0 and the 0 stop at the same time. I mean, that feature literally cost me $450 to have on that scope. And the customer's not really paying for it, right? The way you have to mark things up to distribute it and take care of that kind of stuff. It's like the customer doesn't value that. So you look at our Gen 2 product, the things we addressed is weight. We got a couple different sizes going, and we've addressed a few of those other areas. And so I think we landed with all the electronics and everything kind of right in there at or slightly lighter than kind of the current crop of, ATACR 5 to 25, et cetera. So kind of high 30s, just about breaking into the high 20s on the low end of the spectrum. So we have a setup coming. Hopefully we're going to see that next year. We've been working on that for a couple of years. So that was one that we felt like we could have had out this year if we wouldn't have been impacted a little bit. We actually had the Gen 2 of the Revic rifle scope product, kind of the next gen of the ballistic rangefinder. A lot of guys have been complaining because we've been out of stock on the BR 2500 since early this year, but we were supposed to launch in April the BR4, which is a new, smaller, it's handheld, it's lighter, it's got full ballistic solutions on it, wind vector inputs, all sorts of cool stuff. Like it's a phenomenal product. And our business has been laser rangefinder since 2011, and we haven't had one to sell for 6 months. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, that hurts the bottom line. This COVID stuff's affected a lot of crap. And I've heard it from a lot of people. Well, they released this year, and that's sad. Why didn't they release, I know they could release so much more. It's like they probably want to release something. They just can't because they can't get the freaking products to release. I don't know how many people do that at freaking SHOT Show. They release something and then 3 years later, hey, here it is. It's like freaking seriously, at least give it 6 months or less or something like that. But
yeah, I think we decided if we can't be shipping by June, then we shouldn't be telling anybody in the spring.
Yeah, that was one problem I've had at one of my other employers. It was like, oh yeah, it'll be out Q2. They'd come back, what year? It's like,
yeah.
Oh, you got me there. I can't really say anything. You got anything up to this point, John?
No. He answered any of the questions I was going to have about it. So.
Waiting. So I guess on some final notes, let's talk about some of the other things that people don't understand or maybe don't know that Gunwerks offers. Let me start this off by brass. Gunwerks does offer some brass.
Yep.
What are some other things that you kind of want to tell all these listeners, about the Gunwerks offers that they can look into?
Well, probably the main things that are really important is you think about a shooting system. To me, it's anything that you're going to use to execute an accurate shot. Mm-hmm. So it's like you got your rifle, but we've kind of expanded that rifle from just the rifle. Now we've got the scope, we've got the ammunition, the rangefinder, and then you can start looking at some accessories. But the ammunition's kind of a big deal right now. I think that the precision loaded ammo that's lot tested and controlled, that uses temperature stable powders, I think that's a pretty big deal, and it's fairly unique in the industry. And temperature stable powders seem to be getting more and more unique as we go. But I think that the ammunition and some of the components that go with that are important. We don't really sell a lot of powder primer type stuff, but we did feel that to get the type of performance we want out of our ammo, we needed to get control of the brass, and so the brass is an important product that we've added there and that we control and lot test and watch really closely. If you look at the rifle side, pretty much and anything that you want, we can build. Those are pretty cool. A lot of guys don't realize that all of our components are available. Our bottom metal, we have a floor plate or a kind of AICS magazine compatible bottom metal. I mean, it's really nice stuff. And there's a lot of good functioning bottom metal out there. A lot of utilitarian stuff. Like you look at Hawkins, that's a really great utility type product. We've worked with Hawkins back in the old days with Andy, great guy. We've worked with Dave Kiff on bottom metal when we were sourcing. It's like these guys, the perfect example of doing it the wrong way all the time is they would put this angle that like the Remington bottom metal would have, right? That tang always had this angle on it. So everybody just did it the same. And it drove me nuts. And we had Dave Kiff start making bottom metal for us so that the surfaces were parallel. right? So then if you're pocketing out and machining out like an inlet, you can just machine an inlet, everything's flat and true, and then the bottom metal will drop in, pillars, everything's good. It's like, so we pushed those guys to make some changes there, and then we finally just took it on ourselves and did our own designs. But if you look at our bottom metal, you can actually interchange our floor plate bottom metal with the tackle mag box. So if a guy was wanting to kind of set up a dual, purpose rifle, he could grab both those bottom metals. We even have a couple different release mechanisms. Goes from kind of some low profile stuff into some real tactical. But we have like some barricade stops. They're like handed. So right-handed guy gets a barricade stop. So you catches your mag on the way in. So then you can slide it up. A couple little neat improvements there. So that's pretty handy. Bunch of accessories for our rifles, like the Arca Swiss rails and stuff. We just dropped a tripod, to shoot from. It's about the right. It's probably about as big a tripod as I want to carry, but it gives you really nice support on a rifle, nice support under some of the new BTX rifles, BTX spotting scopes. So we dropped that. That's been a nice accessory for us. And other components that we sell. So Stocks' components, those are available. And we're not really good at that process yet. We're working out the bugs of like making it really convenient for customers to buy an order. The problem that we find is guys want to buy drop-in stuff, and we're used to doing high precision fitment, and those things don't work together. And so we're trying to figure out how we can offer really precise fitment with the ease of kind of drop-in application. But our Stocks use our bedding block system, and our wedge clamp system, so you don't have to do any bedding. We do have some scope levels, some bubble levels. We sell some other guys, but we have our own that we're producing. It's kind of a real trim little unit. We have some shooting bags you see right there, a couple nice lightweight bags that we did. They have a sling swivel cup on them, so it snaps into your extra flush cup on your stock, so you can kind of keep everything together. Other components, actions, obviously, as components. We've sold quite a few of those GRB actions. I thought that was pretty fun. We kind of poked the industry in the eye and kind of sold this really nice action for $800, $850, and it's a nice product for those guys that are wanting to put together a budget rifle system. Has some good features, but I think a lot of the really good guys that make nice stuff have responded with some of their budget lines as well. So that's a nice product, but certainly not unique in the space. What else we got?
You got a lot of stuff there. I mean, hell, I'm even learning stuff that you guys have. So that's a good thing about me doing this, is just kind of understanding, what I do. So if I learn something, hopefully somebody else does.
A lot of guys don't realize how extensive our training program is. I mean, we've trained close to 1,000 guys a season for several years. And I mean, we've been doing training since 2007. I mean, we have a training facility that stays busy from May to October every year. And then we do some travel stuff in the winter. That's actually a pretty cool thing. This year it sucked, but I think it'll be back full swing next year. It'll be nice. I think if you look at the rifle thing, it's pretty awesome. And if you look at the way that our stocks work and our stock designs and actually touch, feel, shoot, I think a guy figures out pretty quick that the level of quality and fitment is good. It's very good. And I think it's commensurate with the price. We like targeting, value things. But at the same time, we have a hard time making, let's say, cutting corners. So it kind of traps us a little bit into higher end price points. It's not because we just only want to sell to, super rich guys. It's like, I love selling to guys that are the working guys, because that's who we are. I mean, we're just dudes that grew up farming and ranching and working hard, and like that's our roots, man. We're not the super elite, but we do have a unrelenting requirement to produce high-end stuff, so it's kind of puts us in a tight spot. But I think what you'll see from us is the last 4 or 5 years of my development efforts, dollars, passion has all been focused on the electro-optics side, and somehow everything's going to start landing all at once. So you're going to see about 5 or 6 really awesome products from us next year. And I think we'll shake up some stuff on the revic side.
And I'm sure you're like me, you're just heartbroken that SHOT Show's dead. It's one of those things that I've talked to a lot of people about it. I think they're going to understand that maybe sometimes SHOT Show isn't all it's brought up to be, because you spend so much money going to it. I'm like, imagine these marketing budgets next year when they don't have to worry about all these giant shows they had to attend, where the booths cost more than most people's homes. So
Yeah.
I think SIG spends more on their SHOT Show booth than we do in revenue in a year.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I've heard a few times, just numbers thrown about a Remington booth and stuff, and I'm just like, holy crap! You've got to sell a lot of stuff to make up for one of those giant booths. And
Yeah,
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what 2021 brings, because everybody's going to kind of do their own thing. I know a lot of people have started doing their own mini SHOT Shows, with their own products and different things like that, and it's exciting. What is your guys' release plan? Is it going to be like spring, fall, summer?
As soon as possible.
ASAP.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty hit or miss throughout the year. I think we'll try to release things as they become available or shortly before they come available, so that the timing will be right. We're so used to consumer direct sales as it is. I don't know that the missing SHOT Show really impacts us as far as how we'll release product throughout the year. So I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. On that working man's note, I just want to throw a pitch in there. We've been working our tails off this last year to do a ballistic app. So we had to make a mobile app to load ballistic profiles onto the revic rifle scope. Mm-hmm. And this year we've worked really hard to get our core underlying algorithm stood up in, kind of a mobile ballistics application, trying to apply those same principles of ease of use and feature set innovation. So it's free. It's available on iPhone and Android. So I would just say, talk about a product where we've spent a lot of money on and a lot of time and effort and focus that doesn't cost anybody any dollars, that application. And I think we've got some cool developments that we'll be able to bring into that space, and hopefully, kind of challenge the status quo a little bit and make everybody deliver more value to the customer.
Okay,
that would be awesome, because that's one thing I've noticed, especially with like a lot of new shooters getting into the 22 stuff, because I've been hitting that pretty hard this year. Is the big question is always what apps to use, and the free ones just are meh. Like, I use Applied Ballistics, but then when you get a new guy that's like trying to start out, and I'm like, here, download this $35 app, I always get the like, oh, kind of.
But the truth is most of those apps are not user friendly.
No, they're not.
Like it's really hard to make the connections of, well, what do I need to do next, or what do I need to fill out? And so that's been our focus, is like, okay, so make a profile. Here's the things you have to fill out. We've got a good tooltips, feature that we're going to try to roll out that kind of teaches you as you go. But it's very simple and Spartan, but it's got a good truing feature. It does have some Doppler files available for a few of the Hornady bullets, the ELD match, ELDX. We have a custom drag model, feature set coming probably early next year. But right now it's like you can pick from G1, G7 if they're available. It's got a pretty good bullet library going. I would say, like, I'm in it too deep, so it's hard for me to like make a definitive judgment. But the focus for that has been ease of use. So I would like to think that it's fairly straightforward for people to use, with lots of little Easter eggs for the experts. Because we're pretty picky about the real deal over here. So.
Right.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think that'll blow up if it has the ease of use. That'll be huge.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things that people don't understand is, even us that have been shooting for a long time, we still screw up inputs, because that's what screws everybody up. You go back through it and you look at your inputs and it's all screwed up. But let me ask you this: what are you using Doppler radar? What are you using to get your data and stuff?
Yeah, Doppler's the way to do it. So what we have right now is we have a full bullet database from all the manufacturers for their published G1 and G7, if it's available, ballistic coefficients. So that's in place. Now, if a manufacturer has made Doppler files available, we have the ability to include those. So that's where, in the case of like the Hornady, you know, we've been great friends with those guys, and they're awesome dudes, and they shared some information with us. So we have a chunk of Doppler data for those available. Our feature that we were working on was actually opening up the CD versus Mach number files for users to customize. So the goal being to make it, let's say, crowdsource or shareable drag files. One of the things that I hate about the current bullet industry is this idea of proprietary. It's like, absolutely not. There's no way that a Doppler file should be proprietary. It's like you go ask Berger for a CD versus Mach number curve for their bullets. They're like, well, we don't have them. You know, Brian Litz does, and Brian Litz uses those as a proprietary, you know, only us type situation. Drives me nuts. I tried to form a Ballistics Association a couple years ago, and I literally contacted all the big bullet guys and said, hey, look, let's form this association. Let's put some standards together for how we measure and report, you know, drag models, and let's publish them. And I said, I will publish my code that allows any of these small, you know, say like shooter or any of these other ballistic applications out there that are started, like it will show them how to use Doppler files in their program. And so I was literally going to give away the code pieces to make that work, and I was willing to put up $100,000 of my scratch to build all the test barrel mechanisms, all the everything. And then we were going to set up with Dave Emery down there at the training center he's at, that does Doppler testing, and we were just going to do it all. And, you know, for all the small bullet guys that don't have access to Doppler like Hornady, you know, it gives them a way to get it done, and it gives a consistency to the testing standard. And I think it would have been awesome. It literally would have changed our industry, but nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah, and coming from that background, which is mine, it amazes me, like when we would test other people's BCs and they were nowhere near, you know, what they had written on their box. And you smile because I know you know exactly who I was probably talking about. But there was a few companies that I don't know where the hell they pulled their numbers from. I think they just put it in a computer system and tried to solve it. You know, and that's one good thing that I will give Brian Litz, is he's taken a lot of those bullets. When I was at Barnes, I sent him a few $1,000s worth of bullets just to test to pull that stuff. But it would be good to see everything done exactly the same, because if you look at SAMI specs, if you look at testing, like the actual ammunition testing, there is a spec that has to be, whether it's SAMI or CIP. So it would be cool to see all the BCs across the board, and guys wouldn't have to be guessing so much. I mean, you're still going to have to true your BC no matter what, depending on twist rate and barrel, you know, the different things. But it's closer than 30 points off, because that's a huge amount of 1,000 yards.
Well, what we found, you know, our experience working with Hornady to do that ELDX bullet development, you know, all the way up through their, you know, Fordoff, you know, system, and then using their Doppler files in our ballistic algorithm, in the PMR, in our ballistic app. It's like, that is the way of the future. And I think the bullet guys are still concerned about sharing the real data, right? It's to share a Doppler curve, it's like kind of lifting your skirt, and they're just a little shy about it. But what they don't understand is, all of a sudden, it takes away, I believe, in a lot of ways, it takes away the chase for the best number. Because right now, you go look in the space, and people make bad decisions on bullet choice based on high BC. Mm-hmm. How does anybody run the 195 grain Berger EOL bullet? It's almost stupid heavy. And if you look at dropping that in any of our normal 7s that we run, 7 Rem Mag, 7 LRM, even 28 Nosler, and you go look at the performance benefit of running that, and then compare that to like just the plain old 180 hybrid target, and look at the difference in velocity and what you get BC versus velocity trade-off. Like you're better off running that hybrid target bullet. Mm-hmm. You know, but because the one bullet has a higher BC, everybody just goes to it, and it makes some manufacturers maybe fudge their numbers a little bit, because they don't want to, you know, they want to launch something and get acceptance and get people to buy it. But, though that will get found out soon enough that you just can't do that. You can't chase that BC number. It's more about the consistency. And once we have that Doppler file and you can measure your distance with a laser rangefinder, if you use a good ballistic algorithm to solve, it doesn't really matter if one's 5 or 10% better than the other one.
Yeah.
Like that's not important anymore, because you can calculate and solve for it precisely. What really matters is wind. And that little 10, 15 per second difference in BC, yeah, it is important for wind, but it's not that important. Like, your ability to read wind's way more important.
Yeah.
So I actually think it will be better for the bullet guys to start, to do this and to share this and to make this a standard industry thing, because people will just get that much more confident in the manufacturer's data, and it will be a better value for the customer. And it's just crazy that we just can't do it all the right way. I guess I'm not king, so I don't get to make all the right decisions, but one of these days it's going to happen.
But it's funny you say that too, because like just seeing the attitudes in the industry. So I was having a conversation with a guy the other day that was looking at getting into the 22 PRS stuff and was asking why the mentality was so much different. And one of the points that I brought up was I account it mostly for there's no cartridge choice, because you don't get people that are spending hours going over the best BC, the best this, the best that, hours of load development, hand loading for 2 days before the match, and then they get there and they get beat because a 14-year-old girl can call wind better than they do. And so that you don't get that guy that's just butthurt, and so then they drag everybody else down because they're upset or they want to blame everybody else. And you don't see that in the 22 side, because you're shooting BC of spitball, and your win call is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You go back to that 22 that we did that was so expensive. We actually developed a custom Doppler file for that bullet ammo combination in that gun. And if anybody wants to bitch about it, it's like, I bet we lost money. We spent so much time figuring out how to barrel up and chamber up a 22 long rifle and put together a gun that shot the same, load, and then the next gun shoots the same ammo. Next gun, like all 100 of those guns, all shot the same ammo to the same accuracy standard, just like our normal systems. Like, that just about broke us. That thing was supposed to be out in like May this year.
Mm-hmm.
That thing was a beast. No, I think that the custom Doppler file is the way the industry is going to go. I'm really excited about it. We've laid the foundation in all of our programs to use it. I think we're going to start playing more with Doppler. I think it's just going to become more prevalent.
Yeah, and see, Randy Brooks, one of the original guys from Barnes, he was one of the first people that I ever knew that used Doppler. He actually figured out a way to use Doppler inside a ballistics tunnel.
Yeah,
which was crazy because people proved him wrong. But kind of hitting on your points a little bit with like that 195. And I'm going to do a podcast about this pretty soon, because I've been asked by a billion people about ballistics, a few ballistics podcasts. But understanding energy at target, everybody wants to shoot the heaviest freaking thing they can do, but people don't understand there's a velocity window where most bullets will work. And you're trying to shoot a heavy ass bullet. Yes, it has badass BC, but what's it going to do when it hits the animal? And when it hits a still target, that's one thing. It doesn't matter what energy it's at that point, because it still goes ding like everything else. But when you get into the hunting side of things, it's a whole new freaking level of understanding ballistics.
In a business, as you're growing, you start measuring things. If you measure the wrong things, your people focus their time on the wrong things, and it doesn't produce the result that you're looking for. The bullet selection is a perfect example of the same thing. If you're measuring the wrong thing, you're going to fail in your selection. And a lot of people, when they're looking at long range hunting, it's like bullet selection gets to be really important. They start looking at things like drop.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, dude, drop doesn't matter. We have computers that take care of drop. The only two things that matter is what's your wind deflection and what is the terminal velocity threshold.
Mm-hmm.
And for most bullets, we're talking 1,800-ish feet per second. So you would say, at what range would your combination hit 1,800 feet per second? And so say it's 1,000 yards. Well, now you've got a 1,000-yard gun. So for me, it's like what I'm looking for is, well, how far can I shoot and kill an animal? It's like, at what distance does that bullet cross that terminal velocity threshold?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you get really sophisticated, you can understand different bullet constructions and how that affects that terminal velocity threshold. You know, some bullets might be a little closer to 1,600, while some bullets need to be 2,000 plus. So you got to be real careful on that designation. But energy doesn't frickin' matter, man. It's how that bullet is designed, or how it, because some bullets aren't designed that way. And Berger didn't design their bullets to work that way. They just do. It's like, how is the bullet expand on initial upset? You know, what's the initial upset distance? What's that cavitation expansion? You know, what's the final penetration? And those are the things that kind of dictate, you know, what you can expect for a bullet. But if you've got a hunting weight bullet, so 100 grain bullet to, you know, 250 grain bullet, like, doesn't really matter necessarily what caliber. It's like, what's the impact velocity? And that's going to drive almost all of the result that you're going to get out of that bullet terminally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So I was looking, just to bring this up real quick, I was looking on in my iTunes, in my app system, and I trying to find the Gunwerks thing. Where is it? Do you know?
It's revic. It's under revic.
Oh, okay, that's why I couldn't find it.
You probably find like a fashion thing, and then you'll find revic ops.
Revic. Oh, okay, it's down like 3 or 4. Okay, there it is. All right, I'm gonna download it right now and play with it, see what I can figure out. That's
yeah, and
so
we didn't job this out. Like, I don't have some, you know, firm developing this for us. This is done in-house. Just like all of our electrical circuit design, all of our ballistic algorithm development, all that stuff is in-house development. We do that inside. We control it. You take a look at that Revic app. It's like, okay, this sucks, dude. I want to hear about it. If you tell me it sucks, enough people tell me it sucks, and I can get on board with that. Like, we'll change it. We'll make it better. You think of a feature that needs to go there, we'll change it. It's like, I foresee, you know, at least a full-time developer working on that for the next 10 years. It's like, I will never be satisfied with where that's at. It can always be better, and I am wide open to input on how to make that better and more usable for the shooters. So it's like, that's a sunk cost. We're doing it. It's like, I just want it to be the best. I'll take all comers. What do you want to see?
Don't let us screw up the inputs, because that's what's going to screw the whole damn thing up anyway. You shoot a stage and you're like, what the hell just happened? And you look at it and you're still from the last 2 stages ago, and your DA is completely wrong and everything's screwed up. It's like, well, it wasn't the freaking calculator. It was me for being an idiot. Happens every damn time. If it hasn't happened to you, you haven't shot long enough. That's all there is to it. But I appreciate it, Aaron. I know you're a busy guy. We've been on here for 1 hour and 15 minutes. I think a lot of great information was put out today. I learned a lot myself. I think Jonathan did.
Yep.
Aaron put out a lot of great information. It was a great podcast. Hopefully we can get some feedback from everybody. I'd like to do another one with you one of these days, and we can kind of talk more about ballistics and some of that stuff, because
you can see that there's no end to the depth of BS knowledge that I have. So I'm game to shoot the bull anytime you want, Cole.
I can lie to anybody too. I was a recruiter. I know how that shit works. So
yeah.
If I don't know, I'll just BS it. So that's what most people do. You just hide behind your keyboard and tell people that. So
make it till you make it.
Yep, exactly. I appreciate it, guys. Again, if there's anything that you want to hear on the Long Range Addicts podcast, please let us know. Either message us, email us, kind of get a hold of us. But again, I appreciate Aaron for joining us. Thanks, Jonathan, for joining us. And hopefully you have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend. Thanks all.
Thank you.